Good morning, dear friends. Welcome. It is Erev Shabbos, Elul 13, September 9th. This Sunday will be the midpoint of Elul. It'll also be September 11th, a special day or rough day, an important day in American, in the American story. And we're here to study the Talmud, one page, one line at a time. We're studying Masechah Shabbos. For some reason, the screen they saved us at the wrong place. But we're on 133b. I just gave the recap, so I just want to recap. The Mishnah is giving a list of items of bris that are done on Shabbos. The Mishnah gives us the header. Matter is that you can do kol tzarchei milah, all the aspects, all the needs of milah. And our question, please don't get vertigo as I scroll. Thank you. The question was, what does it add? The Gemara said it adds that a moyel may, or when a moyel goes and finishes up the facets of the circumcision, the strands, in the words of the Gemara, that sits in hama'akvim v'she'enim ma'akvim. Our Gemara has a question. We're on a quest. Who is the rabbi who believes that once one has, the moyel has withdrawn his hands from cutting, he may no longer cut tzitzin, de'eino ma'akvin. You cannot cut parts of the mitzvah that are not essential halachically. And I point out that it's possible that although halachically those strands, those tzitzin, by the way, just those that appreciate Hebrew language, Dr. Stamler, maybe you might agree with me that tzitzin is probably related to the word tzitzit, believe it or not. It doesn't look the same, but conceptually it may be the same.
Also, you have the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol.
Yeah, that I'm not sure about, but that's also interesting. So hold on, where?
Bye.
So that's where we're up to. So the Gemara first introduces the discussion about Korban Pesach. Again, I don't know why the format just changed on us. I like to have it aligned, but they're not. Yesterday we had the option to do that, and today they're not. So I'm missing something. But if I could figure out, if anybody here, Mark, if you have an idea how to do that, let me know.
What happens if you hit the A and the Aleph? Do you get other options?
Language, vowels, punctuation, font size. I think we used to get layout, but layout is not one of the options anymore.
Oh, that's odd. Very strange. As you switch, you try switching it to Hebrew only and then back again, Stephen.
That was English only.
There you go. There it is.
No, we have English and Hebrew, but it's aligned the wrong way. I'd like it to be side by side.
Try it again now. Now that you switched it. Now it's still not there. But if you switch to English only or Hebrew only, you get the option, which makes no sense at all.
Oh yeah, layout, right? No, but that doesn't give me the option that I want.
I'll try switching to the other one and then switch back. See if it helps. The one on the right.
All right. Well, I've wasted enough of your time today, so I'll try to probe it when I have a moment. Okay. So the Gemara in
Rabbi.
Yes, Rebero.
We're discussing kosher bris and all that.
Yes.
What's the consequences if the bris is not kosher, and who do the consequences fall to?
Well, first of all, it's not always about consequence. It's about a Jew desiring to do their Jewish religious duties in the most ideal and optimum way. So first of all, consequences really is secondary. The question here is, what is the obligation? What is the scope of the mitzvah? When does the mitzvah end? And when we're talking to a Jew that takes their religion seriously, and so they are very much desirous to do their circumcision properly.
Mitzvah too?
Hold on, no, not schar. There's no schar. These are Jews that want to be Jewish and they want to do their faith because they believe that it's a covenant with Hashem, and so schar is secondary. The first thing is a Jew believes that they're created to serve Hashem. And so a person wants to live out their life to the optimum in the most ideal way, according to their opportunity and expectation. And so a Jew, even before there is a reward and punishment, and no doubt there is, but I don't think here the question is who's punished.
No,
I
but
think maybe what you meant to ask is whose responsibility is it here? Who are we talking to? In other words, I think is what you're asking.
if somebody would come to someone and say, you know, I was at your bris and there was a discussion, your bris was not kosher, what's the person to do?
Well, first of all, hopefully that's not the first he's hearing about it. A person, the owner of the bris after bar mitzvah would need to have it right, and before bar mitzvah, the father's responsibility to do it right, and the moil has a responsibility to do his job right. And so, yes, a bris needs to be up to code, and so whoever has the chiyuv in real time to do the bris also has the chiyuv to do the bris in the correct way. They say, and pardon me for saying this, they say that in Yerushalayim there was a certain mohel that when he would come to the mikveh, everyone would kind of turn around because he was very critical of his competition, and he would tell people, "You might want to have an upgrade," and so no one was interested in hearing that. But suffice it to say, were a person to truly not have a kosher bris, why would anyone choose to? Why would any adult choose to undergo a bris? It's because they believe that the covenant with Hashem, as a Jew, is very important, and the bris is very important. But I kind of beat up on you and asking it as the punishment. But the truth is that the Gemara discusses that after bar mitzvah, there would be consequences to a Jew who knows and doesn't get himself a bris. Now, in my book, I'd say, wow, a person that voluntarily goes to have a bris is admirable. Now, really, you know what? I want to stop here just for like a split second, and we're going to dedicate our learning to important women, though Gentile women, passed on this week, and I want to pay tribute to them. To honor my Canadian friends, we'll pay tribute to the Queen who's passed. Yesterday, we were talking about her, and I think again, I was never a major student of the royal family and of the England or the British Commonwealth, but I think we could agree that her story, her biography, and her commitment to a task that was passed down from generation to generation is something that we could learn from, because we also all have a mission that was passed down from generation to generation, and we understand that the entirety of human history and world history is dependent on us continuing this chain, this royal chain, this royal duty. And I think she embodied that royal duty. And so I think it's worthwhile saying l'chaim, or honoring our friends who were subjects of the Queen. And I think she is a good role model for devotion and a person living on duty to the final moments of their life. The Rebbe would actually talk against the idea of retirement. Now, I'm not here to make anyone feel better, to criticize anyone, but the Rebbe's point was that a person should not feel that they don't have something to contribute once they cease their career. A person, until their final moment, has a lot to contribute, and people need to see it that way. And I think the Queen embodied in the most literal sense, where she didn't retire, and there was pictures of her meeting with the new prime minister, mamish, hours, days before she passed. And I think it's a reminder for all of us, maybe we retire from our career, but we are not really retired from our Jewish duty. And of course, that doesn't really need to be said to the folks that are on this Gemara Chabura, because obviously they take their Jewish responsibilities very seriously. But I wanted to pay tribute to the Queen of England, and also our neighbor in the house next door, 9 Seacrest Parkway, Kathy, passed away this week. And she was a shachin tov. We took care of her. I think most of her calories in the last 2-3 years were probably from the shul. And conversely, she put up with us, and she was pretty gracious and looked out. And whenever there was packages in the front of the shul and I was away for a meeting, she would call me and tell me, Rabbi, there's packages on the door. And sometimes people would come, and she might have been my de facto receptionist, especially if it was before and after office hours. And so we'll remember her fondly.
Does that mean we're going to have a new fundraiser?
I'm sorry?
Does that mean we're going to have a new fundraiser?
I love how you think. Let's see what happens. I promised myself that I would not make another public fundraiser that wasn't about digging a hole in the ground and making a foundation. But if anyone's interested in being part of a real estate acquisition for the community, let me know. And we can certainly look into it. But the ikar at this point is that we remember her fondly, and she was a good person. And halavai, she will have the zechus that her home will become a part of a space of Torah and Tefillah and mitzvah. I pray for her that she should have that privilege. Anyways, but now back to our Gemara. And again, we pay tribute. She was a good person, good to us. I think we're pretty lucky. A neighbor to a shul could either be like here. She chose for it to be a mutually advantageous and beneficial relationship. But chas v'shalom, if someone would choose to cause a shul trouble, they certainly would have a lot of fuel to do so. She chose a very noble and good path. And again, I think she enjoyed it. But there were times that maybe someone parked on her grass when they shouldn't have, or on her gravel, and she was very gracious. And so her memory should be a blessing. She'll ever be part of our shul's history. And so there's that. So, but back to our story. Our Gemara brought an opinion that says that once you pull back your hands, once you secede from, withdraw from the bris protocols, then you cannot go back to do anything that's not essential halachically for a kosher bris. And we tried to compare that to a halacha, the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshar, Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroika, who believes that you need to stop skinning the animal that's on Erev Pesach, that's Shabbos, once you've moved past the essential place for what you need to do halachically, which is to remove certain innards and have them burnt. That is the initial comparison. The Gemara challenges that comparison by saying, hold on a second. By Karban Pesach, we don't have Zekeli V'Anveyu. We aren't called upon to beautify it. Whereas every other mitzvah, and apparently including the bris, and again, b'li neder, I am going to try to get a moel. I'm going to try to ask Rabbi Garin if he'll join us on Zoom, maybe even for 15, 20 minutes. I don't know if I can get him. He's a busy man. But I will ask him if he can come and maybe he can fill us in on some of the technicalities, as well as maybe some of the hashkafa ideas that we're just coming across over here.
Promise him a cut.
I'm sorry?
I said, promise him a cut.
We'll give him a cut.
Yeah.
And if he says no, I'll ask Dr. Hammer to pull family connections.
Rabbi.
Yes.
So if we're told all this for a moil, all he has to know from all this discussion is be careful before you lift your hand. Make
Indeed.
sure before you stop.
So you're saying before you bandage
for a moil, he would know that.
You're saying before you bandage up the baby and close the diaper and go get your bagel,
Right.
do a proper investigation and make sure that it's right. Now, I will tell you, this is probably a question that we can ask the mohel too. My sense, and again, I usually try to stand back. The whole blood and cutting, it just is not my. It's a mitzvah. It's a wonderful thing, but it's not something that I have an easy time watching. But it's possible or plausible that blood and in the moment you can't entirely see. It's possible that it could transpire that certain tissue kind of bounces back, if you will, or comes back into a position that is problematic, but one is not entirely certain in the moment. I don't know if that is the case, but I'm assuming if there's a whole discussion about tzitzin and ma'akvin and tzitzin and shin ma'akvin, that it's not impossible that one could miss. But again, bli neder, let's hold that question. And when we get our moel on the call, we'll be able to, if Rabbi Gorin can't do it, I have other moelim that I can call, but I'd like someone that's really, an expert to give us, to be able to help us out. So now the Gemara is going to propose an additional or an alternative author, an alternative Tana, who would embrace the opinion that says that when you withdrew your hands, you can only do essential aspects of bris, but not essential. So basically, aesthetics, no. Essential, yes. But why must you stop? why can't you finish the job to completion? So, or who says this? Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi is going to propose another Tana. Hamani, Rabbi Yossi. This is going to be the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Clearly, we've not fully embraced the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. That it was reflective of the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan and Breika, or was it Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan and Breika? Yeah, Rabbi. Amani Rabbi Yossi, it's going to be a different Mishnah that we know about, and a Mishnah that conveys the teaching of Rabbi Yossi. The Tanan, this is a Mishnah that's talking about Kiddush HaChodesh and the testimony about the sighting of a new moon. As we know, the way the Jewish calendar worked, or the way an old month closed and a new month began, according to the ideal biblical traditional structure, was that a new month begins at the sighting of the slightest sliver of a new moon. Who has to sight the new moon? Well, it's not so simple. Witnesses need to witness it and give testimony in Beis Din, and then the Beis Din accepts the testimony, and if the testimony should prove to be hold up the scrutiny of the Beis Din, well, then they will determine that it is Rosh Chodesh. They'll declare it a new month, and all the relevant halachot, whether it has to do with temple rites or the calendar for the next month, would begin to all fall into place. There are vast halachot about the treatment of the witnesses, and one of the things, of course, is that they are able to be mechal al Shabbos. Now let's see the Mishnah, and that deals with a specific scenario. The Mishnah states, Bein shenir ba'alol, whether the moon is super clear. Rashi reminds us, shenir hachadash, we're talking about the new moon. Bein shaloi nir ba'alol, or maybe it's a whole lot more vague, it's not clear. Rashi, ba'alil, begiloi lakol, revealed, open to everyone. The yesh ladas, shera'uhu Beis Din, when it's really, really, really clear, well, then obviously the Beis Din themselves saw it. V'hakroivim lahem, and those who were close proximity to Beis Din. V'ein sarech leroyim chutz latchum, those who view the moon, but they are outside of the tchum, which means that they are not really allowed under normal circumstances to travel. L'chal Shabbos, so those that are outside of tchum don't need to move out of Shabbos. Lavei lahay lifnei Beis Din. L'chalim. So these individuals, if the moon is super clear and you live 10 miles out of Jerusalem and there's a big forest in the way, or there's a big vast open area which is out of the tchum, so the question is now, well, here's the question. You're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos, but you know that you're not the only one that saw it. So do you still be Mechal Shabbos or not? So the first opinion in the Mishnah says, regardless of how clear or unclear the moon is, you witness, go ahead, travel to the Sanhedrin, travel to the Beis Din, give your testimony. Rabbi Yossi says no. Nira be'alo, and this is really what Rashi was talking about. If the moon is super clear, ein mechalin olav es Shabbos, we will not be mechal Shabbos because you're not needed. There are closer witnesses who can ride in, not literally ride in, who can walk into Beis Din without needing to be mechal Shabbos. Let's read that Rashi again now that we be'alo begiloi lakol. V'yesh l'das sharo Beis Din v'akrevim lahem. We could know that others saw it. Rabbi Yossi Omer, what's the comparison between this halacha that Rabbi Yossi says that you're only mechal Shabbos if it is essential, but not if it is not essential? Let's read Rashi. Alma, we see afagav the ika mitzvah. Even though there is a mitzvah, it is a mitzvah to give testimony. Kivan the lav l'tzorech givoyahu, being that it is ultimately not necessary for the Beis Hamikdash lemechal linon. V'hachanami pirish. Now that he withdrew, they have a schalta dechil kihacha l'tzorech givoyahu lemechal linon. Once it is no longer essential, you cannot be mechal Shabbos. So here, the comparison is a whole lot more ambiguous, or a whole lot more vague, or I shouldn't say vague. It's a whole lot more conceptual and less literal. The earlier scenario, which we rejected, you have the cutting of the milah, and you have what's needed, and you have what's not essentially needed, and then you have the skinning of the animal. You have the pulling off what's needed or versus what's not needed. So, although the Gemara isn't making a graphic comparison, but it's a whole lot more clear because there are stages. There's a stage that's essential. There's a stage that's not essential. Here, it's more abstract in that it's not about the phase of an individual doing the mitzvah. It's about, is it essential or not? And if you know someone else can do it, it is not essential. Let's see if Rabbi Steinsaltz gives. I think he does. Okay. Let's read. Eyewitnesses who saw the appearance of the moon may desecrate Shabbos to testify. Rabbi Yossi says, since other witnesses located near it to court will certainly testify. Again, this is what Rashi says. If these distant witnesses go to court to testify, they will desecrate Shabbos unnecessarily. Apparently, here, this is the punchline. This is the Rabbi Steinsaltz's explanation. Apparently, Rabbi Yossi holds, if the basic requirement of the mitzvah have already been fulfilled, one may no longer desecrate Shabbos in its performance. So let's read those words again. If the basic requirements have been fulfilled, what's the basic requirements by the Kiddush HaChodesh? That other, better, closer witnesses can come. So you're not needed. Similarly, once you've cut what's needed, aesthetics ahin, aesthetics aher, the bris is done, the core obligation is done, and now we're not going to let you be Mechal Shabbos again. This is the second attempt.
So what happens? You have a Sanhedrin that's done Dinei Nefashot, and you need witnesses, and if they don't show up, they cost someone's life. Can they be Mechal Shabbos too? I'm assuming they could because it's a question of Pikuach Nefesh.
Oh, this is a very important distinction. Here by Kiddush HaChodesh, you just need really two witnesses. Whereas for a capital punishment or capital discussion, you certainly would need every witness possible because you never know which witness saw an angle that might either implicate or how do you call it, or vindicate the person. However, the Sanhedrin, the High Court, doesn't sit on Shabbos for
I know that, but in case they have to get there and the court doesn't expect them, and if they don't show up on Sunday,
I'm not sure. I don't believe there is discussion on being Mechal Shabbos in such a case, but it's an interesting question. It's worthy of further
add it to the list.
But now let's see how the Gemara rejects this analogy. Mimai, why would you assume that the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi Hasam. Maybe by the moon, there isn't really a total absolute license for Shabbos to be pushed aside. We'll read Rashi, we'll read Rabbi Steinsaltz in a moment. Aval hacha, the nitna Shabbos lidachos in the context of bris, Shabbos is overridden. So maybe hachanami, everybody would agree that you should be allowed to finish the job. It's not a good comparison. Where do we see this? Where do we see that Shabbos isn't pushed aside totally for the witnesses? Let's read Rashi. Afilu bas chalasa, the hanir ba'ol. Aval hacha kivan shenitna Shabbos lidchos lahaschel b'hamila. Once you're absolutely going to be Mechal Shabbos, hachanami dechi pirish v'hadar lavas chala nafshahi v'havik. Let me read Rabbi Steinsaltz here. How can you compare the two? In the case of the new moon, there was no allowance made for Shabbos to be overridden. Why? Given that the moon was clearly seen and testimony to that effect could have been delivered easily, there was no need for additional witnesses to come and desecrate Shabbos. And the prohibition to desecrate Shabbos remained in place. So for these witnesses, they knew they weren't needed. And so there was never even an iota of license. And so being that there was never a license, there's not a license to continue. Meaning, and this is actually what I told you, it's more of an abstract comparison. By the bris, you started, now you stopped. By the Kiddush HaChodesh, you didn't do anything. Someone else went. So maybe if there are other witnesses, the prohibition to desecrate Shabbos remained in place. However, by bris, where we're allowed to be machal Shabbos with certainty, absolutely, as it is permitted and required to perform the circumcision on Shabbos and at some point in time. Therefore, it should be permitted to also clean up, to do any missing components. Now, I have a problem with this question. I just don't know how to, I don't have the proper, I don't know how to communicate. There's something that's bothering me here about the Rashi's explanation and about the challenge. I'll explain to you. Let me see if I can explain what my problem is. I don't know if it's a good problem. I'm just telling you something's bothering me. The question was, can these guys testify or not? Rabbi Yossi says no. Others say yes. Rabbi Yossi, who says no, is because the mitzvah is not needed. They're not needed. How do we know they're not needed? Because Rabbi Yossi said they're not needed. Otherwise, they would be halachically needed. But the answer or the challenge, we say, they're not needed, so it's not similar to a bris where they're not needed, so they can't be Mechal Shabbos. And so it's not similar to a bris where you can't be Mechal Shabbos. But how do we know they're not Mechal Shabbos? Only because that's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. So let me see if maybe in due time I'll find the right words for my question. Maybe it's not really a good question at all. But the comparison is meaning once we'll presume the comparison to be a good comparison, I don't see how the challenge undoes it. But anyways, the punchline is the Gemara ultimately rejects the assertion that the opinion of our Mishnah that says that once you stop, you can't start again is Rabbi Yossi. That is far from certain. It's possible it would be consistent for Rabbi Yossi to say, here you're not needed, don't be Mechal Shabbos. But by bris, where you've already, and you have a standing license to be Mechal Shabbos, finish the job. So what, you stopped. It's the day of the bris. The bris has certain steps. The ideal bris includes the trimmings. Go ahead and do the trimmings. Rabbi Yossi could say that.
I have another point.
Go ahead.
With the molad of the moon, you need Adam. However, the molad will happen de facto whether there are Adam or there are no Adam. It happens. With a Mila, if you don't do it, it's not going to be done on the 8th day.
It's not 1,000,000% so. Actually, let's look up the Mishnah. Kiddush HaChodesh would not happen without a witness. But maybe I misunderstood you. What you're saying is, I don't care if you don't show up.
I'm not talking about Kiddush HaChodesh. I'm talking about the molad of the.
No, but Kiddush HaChodesh isn't just a ritual thing. Kiddush HaChodesh is determining when Rosh Chodesh will be. And if there is no witness, it'll be the next day. So these witnesses are making a very big impact on the destiny of this year's calendar and possibly all eternity.
Yes, but the Evid, if somebody comes in after Shabbos and says, I saw it yesterday, it's still, exactly when it was.
You know when it was, but you may have not. It may not have the impact. Again, I don't want to. There's some intricacy that we need and we will explore with Hashem's help soon enough. Suffice it to say, there is a license for witnesses to be Mechal Shabbos, except if they know they're not needed. If they're not sure if they're needed, they can come. But if they know they're not needed, they're not allowed to be Mechal Shabbos. Why? It's a mitzvah. Yeah, but it's not an essential mitzvah. That's, I think, the way Rashi explains it. That's the way Steindl explains it. Essential means no one else is there to do it. Unessential means if you're not there, someone else. In bris, essential means halacha says you need to do this. Unessential says halacha doesn't say you need to do this, but it is part of the general bris package.
Rabbi,
the moil can't leave his tips, with the family. That would not be good. Go ahead, Rebel.
Human nature being what it is, if the witnesses say somebody else is going to do it, you have the human possibility that everybody will think somebody else did it.
What do you mean?
So they may not.
You're saying if no, it's very simple. This whole thought process. Well, actually, let me back up. What you're saying is true. That's the reason why, generally speaking, halacha, the Mishnah, the Sanhedrin was very permissive. They would let many, many, many people come to give witness testimony, and they would give each of them all the perks and the attention as if they were needed, so that they wouldn't hesitate to come in the future. That might explain why the rabbis in that Mishnah were not willing to put any break on any restriction on who can come. But I suppose Rabbi Yossi would say, no, everybody who lives within Tchum Shabbos must show up. But if you're out of Tchum Shabbos, look, Yerushalayim was a pretty big city, at least for ancient standards. You had a few minyanim of people there that could see the moon. If you're 10 miles out, odds are whatever that you see, they see too. Now, I know you might tell me it's not exactly so, because depending on how high the moon is in the sky and the elevation, and the trees and the mountains, I hear you. I don't know enough about that to give you any more information than that. But the understanding here was that people within Tchum would find it. It's also possible, by the way, I said Yerushalayim, but these halachas would extend to when the Sanhedrin was in the Galilee as well, right? And over there, maybe, well, actually, there it's more mountainous. I don't know. All right. I don't know, Roberto, did I address your point?
No, but I think presuming that somebody else is going to do something is a dangerous thing. That's my point.
It's like somebody do something. There's no somebody, right?
Right.
Either you get up and make a difference, or
maybe it was onerous to be a witness. You know what I mean? It may not be all positive. You have to go, you have to witness.
It was a hassle. But there was chashivas involved. There was. Maybe. Did I tell you? I think I told you. Someone was missing. Someone that's saying Kaddish was missing in shul on Sunday and Monday. And to me, that wasn't a big deal, because people occasionally take off a day or two, or they travel or whatever. But did I say? If I said this already, stop me. Reb Beryl Schusterman approached me and says, Rabbi, Beryl is the Baal HaBagels. Again, if I said this yesterday, stop me. I was like, Rabbi, this person is missing. Is he okay? I said, listen, a person's missing 2 days. We don't have to, we don't take attendance. If he's going to another shul, we'll be sad, but we're not going to beat him up. Let's give him some space. But then the next day, I realized he still wasn't there. I said, I got to call him. So I called him, and it turns out that he was in bed, not feeling well. And I asked him what he's feeling, and he explained to me the symptoms, and the symptoms sounded to me like something that couldn't and shouldn't wait. So I called up. There's a guy who moved into town a year or two ago, and he has a doctor's office right nearby. So I called him. I told this Yid, I said, you better go to this guy close by. And I called the doctor and I said, you need to see this man today. Please don't push it off. Make sure you make room for him. And the doctor saw him, and right away he took his blood pressure, and it was mamish very, very, very high. And so because Reb Beryl noticed and told me, and then I was aware of it, and I called him, we were able to get him into the hospital, and Baruch Hashem, he stabilized, but Chas v'Shalom had. So what's the point? Everyone always says, yes, someone else will check in, someone else will think about that person, but sometimes it takes one Reb Beryl to notice someone's missing, and then of course the rabbi's job is to follow up, if no one else does. But ultimately, the point is, like Reb Beryl Schuster is saying, that sometimes when you wait for somebody else to respond, it could chas v'shalom be too late. Everyone needs to feel the full opportunity and the full responsibility and the full blessing of being a first responder in looking out for each other. So, good point, and it's a true point. And when the rabbi gets up and shul says, "Will somebody sponsor the kiddush?" There's no somebody. I mean, many times there are, because we're very blessed, but there's no such thing as a somebody. There needs to be a specific somebody. All right, let's see so that the Gemara, however, rejects and says it is far from certain that Rabbi Yossi would be the person who says that you cannot tidy up the tzitzin she'eino ma'akfin. And so we need a third position. Ooh, are you ready for this? Amri Nahardai, the Chachamim of Naharda, one of the great rabbinic. Okay, I don't know if the word was rabbinic. One of the big Amoraic, one of the big towns in Bavel with great scholars. The scholars of Nahardai said, or Naharda, said, you know who is the Tana who expresses the position about bris that you cannot do the unessential. You can't tidy up if you've already eaten your bagel. It doesn't matter if you eat your bagel. As soon as you put the shmir on the bagel, you already can't go back. Who says that? It's Rabbanon the Pliga led Rabbi Yossi. It's another Mishnah. It's the rabbis in the Mishnah who argue with Rabbi Yossi in a different discussion. Well, what's that discussion? Tanan, here's a Mishnah. We should pull up the Mishnah in its original source. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Safaria. Delivered once again, I think. Let's learn this Mishnah. It's a nice Mishnah. It's a good Mishnah. And I hope you'll bear with me. Oh, Mark, you see, I didn't even notice that we had the new layout. Was it like that the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay, so no, Baruch Hashem. There were two tables in the ulam. Mibifnim al Pesach Habayis, in the entrance, next to the entrance of the Beis Hamikdash. Echad shel shayish, the echad shel zav. One was made of marble, one was of gold. Al shel shayish, noistam lechem aponim b'chnisasai. The marble would have the bread that was freshly baked. The al shel zav yitziyasai, and then on the gold would be the outgoing breads. The breads that have sat all week and they're going to be consumed by the kohanim. Why would you start out with the marble and then go to the gold? Very interesting. We want to always be continuously upgrading and using higher quality materials in everything in the Beis Hamikdash. And so to take the lechem aponim and to place them previously on a more extravagant, elaborate table, and then later on a lesser grade table would be a downgrading of something in the Beis Hamikdash, and that would be contrary to the philosophy of the Beis Hamikdash. Dr. Stamler, one might ask, what if it was made of ivory? But the reality is the Mishnah doesn't discuss ivory kalim in the Beis Hamikdash, so we don't have that problem. I'm referencing the recent article that we talked about of the ivory stuff found from the First Temple era. The echad shel zav mibifnim, and then there was also a table in the inside, sha'olav lechem haponim tamid, and then there was the shulchan, I think that's what we're talking about, which had the lechem haponim tamid. Let's see if Rabbi Steindal's can. Let's see if the translation here, the current Steindal affirms this. And there was one table of gold within the sanctuary. This is, I believe, the shulchan. Bear with me. Arba koyanim nichnasin. The ritual was, the protocol was, this happens on Shabbos. 4 koyanim walk inside. Shnayim biyadam, shnei sedarim, shnayim biyadam, shnei bozichin. One team goes with the new breads, and the others have shnei sedarim. That's the way they're describing the breads, the show breads, the lechem haponim. Ushnayim litol shnei bozichin, and 2 of them are holding bowls with spices, incense. Hamachnisin oimdim mitzafain, the ones who enter, or I should say the new koyanim, or the new breads, I think. Maybe the new koyanim stand in the north, Pneim Ladarim facing south, Hamaitzim, Oimdim Medarim, Pneim Latzafin, and the ones that are outgoing, I believe we're describing the koyanim. As we know, the changing of the guards, the new shifts would also change, I believe, on Shabbos. And so they're facing each other over there. Elu Moishchim, Elu Manichim, these take out and these place down. And they seamlessly place down right in front of the others. Again, I'm going to look at the translation, make sure that I'm giving you the right shot. Take a look. These priests draw the old bread, the new ones, they put the new ones. For each handbreadth of this, the handbreadth, basically, they seamlessly move in a fluid motion so that the shulchan constantly has these breads. It needs to constantly be there. Rabbi Yossi, again, we're going to see this in our Gemara. I just wanted to see the fullness of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi says, "Afilu elu noitlim, the elu manichim." It's okay if the first team take off and the next team plays on. Afzu ha'isa tamid. This amount of lapse would still be consistent with the expression tamid. Yatsu. The outgoing kohanim go out. V'nastam al shulchan shel zav shayabulam. Now those breads, the outgoing breads, are placed on the gold table that's outside of the heichal. They would burn up that incense. V'chalos mischalkos l'kohanim, and the kohanim of that mishmar would then be handed out challah. Then the Mishnah continues, Chalim Kirilius B'Shabbos, what do you do if it's in Kippur? You can't eat. What if it's Erev Shabbos? What if Yom Kippur is Erev Shabbos? So there's other things, etc., etc. So this is the Mishnah describing the showbread, the lechem hapanim. Now let's see it in the Gemara, if I can find the place. Here we go. Again, I don't. If anyone realized what happened that made it be like this, that we could do it in the future, let me know. This is what the Nardai say. This is who is the opinion of our Mishnah that says, once you stop the bris, you can't resume for anything that is not absolutely halachically essential. No upgrades, no trimmings, unless it is halachically essential. Rabban and the Plig Alad Rabbi Yossi. It's the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Yossi. The Tanan, Arba, Kainim Nechnasim, the Mishnah we just read in Menachos. Now we'll see it in the Gemara. There are 4 Kainim who would enter into the Beis Hamikdash, into the Heichal, into the Beis Hamikdash proper. By the way, you never went into this sanctuary unless you actually had a ritual need. You might be in the chutzner or the how do you call it? Or the ulam. But the inside the Beis Hamikdash, in the Heichal, you had to be doing an essential task. The Tanan Arba Kainim Nechnasim, 4 Kainim would go in, Shnai B'Yadam Shnei Sedarim, 2 would go in carrying the breads, Shnai B'Yadam Shnei Bazichim, and 2 would be holding 2 bowls of spices. And there would be 4 that are in front of them, meaning the old shift and the new shift. Shnayim Litol Shnei Sedarim, 2 would be there to take off 2 rows of bread, Shnayim Litol Shnei Bazichim, and 2 Kainim would receive the incense. Those that were entering and bringing the new breads would stand in the north facing the south. Those who were outgoing would stand on the south facing the north. How were the breads, the old breads placed and the new breads removed? The first team would take away a little, and then as they're pulling away, the other team would. Imagine you're trying to park in a parking space and there's a guy pulling out, but you don't want anyone else to take that space. And you're assuming we're talking about very aggressive and very talented drivers. If you've ever seen, there's some dancing and making sure that no one else gets in front. You want to stay as close as possible. So lahavdil, here we're describing as soon as the outgoing goes out, the incoming comes in seamlessly, continuously. The tefach of the old was right next to the tefach of the new to make sure that the shulchan always had chalas. The lechem hapanim, the showbread, as we translated for whatever reason, which were on the shulchan, which was in the heichal, one of the holy articles of the Beis Hamikdash, it needs to always be there. Let's read Rashi's now. Rabbanan the Pliga Leder Yechanan, Rabbi Yosim, sorry, Kabi lechem hapanim. Arba kayanim nechnasim, 4 kayanim go in, leheichal b'Shabbos, into the sanctuary on Shabbos. We're talking about the kodesh here. Lizdar lechem hapanim, to arrange the showbread. Sorry. Shnei Sedarim, Shnai Marchish Lechem, 2 of them are carrying the breads. Shnei Bazichim, Shnei Kapos Meleis Levina. So I said bowls. Here he's saying it's 2 spoons. Is kapos spoons or bowls? Help me out over here, someone. Dr. Stamler.
What was the question exactly as far as the bowls?
Kapot.
Yeah.
Bowls or spoons?
Kapot is spoons. Kapot is spoons.
Spoons, kapot. So in modern Hebrew, it would be kapiot, but in
no, kapiot are teaspoons. Kapot,
so kapot are
the soup spoons. Kapiot are smaller.
Are spoonalach.
Spoonalach.
All right, shtei kapos meleis levina, 2 spoons full of frankincense. K'dichsiv nasata al mareches levina zak. Makdim lifneim shnayim litol min hashulchan shnei star ma'ishanim. So 2 kainim come, they take the old breads. The shnayim litol shnei abzichim, and 2 come to receive the incense. The hashulchan hayanasun arkay mimizrach lemariv. The table was aligned, going east to west. The elu aim de mizel roichem hashulchan, and the kainim are essentially standing along the wide angle of the table. But soften the elu aim the negda the darm, and the 2 kainim are standing on the south side. By the way, if you hear, there was a highly choreographed, highly determined way that all these rituals would transpire in the Beis Hamikdash. The incoming would be on the north. The north has a certain chashivos. Kedamrina, we say Sukkah, Gam Bechiluk Lachem Aponim, Lashmar Sam Chnasim, Eitzim, and Chnasim again. He was Kadesh Yido Nechnasim. So this was all with precision. We still haven't made our punchline yet. We've just introduced this mission. Rabbi Yossi disagrees and says, "Afilu elo noitlim, elo manichim, av zayatamid." Even if the first group would take it off fully, and only then the second group would place it on. So there were some seconds where there was nothing on the table. This would yet be considered tamid. Now, I didn't read Rashi, and I'll be honest, I haven't really read this Gemara in depth for a while. It's been a while. But if you had to guess, where would you see a comparison to circumcision and this story over here of how closely, how seamlessly the old breads and the new breads must be? Anyone want to take a stab at it before we read Rabbi Stein's?
Seems like they would almost slide the old one, push the new one in, slide the old one out. So it almost.
Where would you find an analogy or a potential commonality with our discussion of bris?
I think that if there's a couple of seconds in between, nish geferla.
How does that compare to bris?
Lifting his hand for a minute.
Oh, so if I had to guess, I would say maybe is taking your hands away, is getting your bagel, is that considered a break? Let's see. Let's read Rabbi Steinsaltz first. Rabbi Yossi says, even if these priests were to first take the old bread off the table and then the new one, it would be fine. It is unnecessary to ensure the uninterrupted presence of the showbread on the table. Apparently, the rabbis hold even a moment's break in the performance of a mitzvah is deemed an interruption. Same principle would apply to circumcision. Once one withdrew and is no longer engaged in its performance, it is as though he completed the mitzvah, he may no longer return to it. By just turning away, washing your hands, putting on some hand sanitizer, I don't know, whatever else, shaking the father's hand, turning away from the actual act of the bris, is that considered a break or not? Well, the rabbis say even the slightest break is a break. It's a pause, and we can't have a pause. And Rabbi Yossi says, take a chill. The slightest break, it's still considered tamid, it's still considered seamless. We're not going to melt for that small break in time. So it sounds like a very technical question, or it sounds like one might say it's a silly question, but clearly, if you'd read the Mishnah in isolation, so what do you care? No break, a small break. But obviously, conceptually and halachically, and the Gemara is looking at this as a very important discussion about how much of a gap of time is considered a break. If I was being very cynical, I might say this Gemara might have bearings on the 5-second rule. How much time is as if nothing at all has elapsed?
So usually they use that word dibur.
Right, so there is such a thing in halacha as toich kedei dibur, or rega kimemra, which means the time it takes to say rega, or what do we say? Sometimes Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Umayri. So there is a certain amount of time that's not even a break, and so that's going to be the comparison between bris and the lechem hapanim. When we continue Mirz Hashem on Monday, hold on, actually, if you can stand on for like another second, let me see something. Bear with me. All right, my son has a doctor's appointment. There's a chance I'm not going to be back on time. Let me send you a message. Everyone here sees the WhatsApp group, just because I don't want anyone to be uninformed. So unfortunately, I need to give you a question mark about Monday, and I'm sorry about that. Because we have a program in one of the buildings, so I'm going to. All right, so there's a chance that Monday won't be happening. I'm sorry. If you don't mind, keep an eye out on the WhatsApp group. When I get a confirmation, I'll let you know. My dear friends, I want to wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos. If you live in New York or in the tri-state area, I want to invite you to join us on Sunday. We're going to be at the Ohel.
Me.
So come visit us. We're going to be at the Ohel, and then we're going to be in Crown Heights. We're going to go to the Rebbe's room. Hopefully we'll see the library famous library of Agudat Hasidei Chabad. Well, actually, we're not going to see the whole library. We're going to see they have a how do you call it, a exhibition, and then we're going to also have the chance to pray mincha in the Rebbe's home, which is hard to get into, but I was able to find another group, and together we used our collective weight. And so if you're in the tri-state area, feel free to join us. I want to wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos.
Could you update us what time it's going to be there?
If you message me, I'll send you the schedule.
Okay.
Dear friends, have a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you for putting up with my scheduling idiosyncrasies. I'm grateful for your patience and grateful for your participation. I look forward to studying hopefully Monday, but a small chance that it'll be Tuesday. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you.
Have a good Shabbos.